They said all the right things, didn't they? Told you what you wanted to hear, promised loyalty, swore they'd never change, looked you in the eye and made it sound like truth. And maybe for a while you believed it because you wanted to, you listened, you gave the benefit of the doubt, you waited for the actions to match the words. But they never did. And now you're here not because of what they said, but because of what they showed you when they thought you weren't paying attention. See, the problem isn't that you listened, it's that you listened too much. You were taught to take people at their word, to believe promises, to give trust easily. But here's the truth. No one tells you words are the easiest part of the lie. It's the performance, the bait, the illusion. And if you're not careful, you'll live your whole life chasing potential that never existed. So stop listening, start looking, start watching. Because actions, they don't lie. Patterns, they don't shift under pressure. Behavior, it'll tell you everything if you're smart enough to shut your mouth, quiet your emotions, and just observe. That's where your power is. In stillness, in study, in silence. Everyone out there wants to be heard, everyone wants to talk, to explain, to defend. But the real power, it's with the person who doesn't need to say a thing. The one who already knows the truth, not because it was said, but because it was shown. You want to stop being played? You want to stop being blindsided, hurt, disappointed? Then stop listening. Look, watch. Because the truth is never spoken, it's lived. They'll tell you they care, that they're loyal, that they'll be there when it matters. And in the moment, it sounds good because most people are trained to be good with their words. Some even make it an art form. They know how to wrap betrayal in apology, how to make disrespect look like a joke, how to cover up a lie with just enough charm that you hesitate before calling it out. But here's the reality that'll change your life once you let it sink in. Words are cheap, but behavior never lies. See, anyone can talk. Anyone can post the quotes, wear the mask, say the right thing. But if you want to know who someone really is, watch how they move when no one's clapping. Pay attention to how they act when there's nothing in it for them. Because behavior, not words, is where truth lives. Some people will tell you they support you until you shine too bright. They'll say they love you, but keep you in cycles of disrespect. They'll swear they've changed while repeating the same patterns over and over. And you'll be tempted to hold on to their words because the words give you hope. The words create just enough of a fantasy to delay the reality. But hope built on words with no follow-through is false hope. It's a trap, a cycle. And it costs you time, which is the one thing you'll never get back. When someone says, I didn't mean to hurt you, but they keep doing the same thing, that's not a mistake, that's a message. When someone promises, I'll do better, but nothing changes, what they're really saying is, I'll say what I need to keep access to you. You've got to understand, real loyalty doesn't need a speech. Respect doesn't need to be explained. Love doesn't have to be proven with words. It shows up in behavior, in energy, in consistency. So the next time someone says something that sounds good, hit pause. Ask yourself, does what they're saying align with what they do? Are their patterns honest? Or are they just skilled at resetting your expectations every time they mess up? Because when you ignore behavior in favor of words, you teach people that all they have to do is perform. You become easy to manipulate. But when you value behavior over talk, something shifts. You stop getting fooled. You stop making excuses for people. You stop waiting around for someone to become who they keep saying they are. And the truth is, most people don't want to be held to the standard of their behavior. They want grace without growth, forgiveness without effort, access without accountability. You know what that makes you if you keep allowing it. Not kind, not understanding, naive. And there's nothing empowering about being the one who always believes in the potential that never turns into reality. That's not love, that's denial. The people who value you will show up for you in ways that don't need to be talked about. They'll be solid when no one's watching. They'll keep their word not because they have to, but because it reflects who they are. You won't need to beg, plead, or question. You won't feel anxious every time they say something, wondering if this time it'll be different. Because people of substance don't rely on words. They live their values. They're consistent in silence, predictable in pressure, loyal without needing the spotlight. So ask yourself this, Who in your life do you keep around because of what they say, not because of what they do? Who keeps getting second chances, not because they've earned them, but because you're afraid to let go of their potential? There's nothing wrong with wanting to believe in someone, but it's a dangerous thing to believe in words over behavior. Because while you're waiting for them to become the person they keep describing, they're showing you day after day that they're not that person at all. Pay attention, watch the patterns, watch how they handle your boundaries, how they show up when it's inconvenient, how they treat you when you're not useful to them. That's who they are. And once you see it clearly, believe it. Not what they say, not what you hope. What they do, that's where your clarity lives. That's where your power begins. People will tell you what they think you want to hear. They'll choose their words carefully, speak softly when they need to, and raise their voices when they want to rattle you. They'll craft apologies, pull on your empathy, and spin stories that make them the victim, just long enough to twist your loyalty. And if you're not grounded, if you're listening too closely, too emotionally, you'll be pulled into their script without even realizing it. Because listening when you're not careful makes you emotional. You start reacting instead of observing. You get hooked into explanations, distracted by tone, affected by volume, and deceived by delivery. And here's what people don't tell you. Words are often used to disarm you, to soften your boundaries, to confuse your instincts. But when you stop reacting to what's being said and start watching what's being done, everything changes. That's where your power is, not in what you hear, but in what you see. Observation detaches you from the emotional chaos. It gives you clarity. It gives you distance. It hands you the ability to see what's real versus what's rehearsed. Because when you're simply listening, especially to someone who's skilled at manipulation, you're not grounded in truth. You're grounded in narrative, and people will create any narrative necessary to avoid responsibility or gain control. Observation pulls you out of that trap. It makes you immune to performance. Think about it. How many times have you heard someone say, "I didn't mean it," only to watch them do the exact same thing again? How many times have they said, "You're overthinking," or "You're being sensitive," just to make you question what you felt, even though your gut knew something wasn't right? Listening too much gives people room to twist your mind. But when you take a step back and observe, calmly, silently, you begin to see the truth they're trying to cover with words. You notice the patterns, the inconsistencies, the discomfort they have when they're not in control of the conversation. You see when their actions betray their apologies. You see when their silence is louder than their promises. You see when their patterns say, "I don't care," even if their mouth says, "I love you." That's why observation is powerful. It's emotional discipline, it's control, it's choosing to watch instead of react, choosing to gather information instead of giving it away. Because here's another truth. When you're always listening, you're always revealing. You show what triggers you, what you fear, what you hope for, what you need, and people who want control will use that against you. But when you observe, you say nothing, you give nothing, you become a mirror, and people will always reveal themselves in a mirror. Their need for validation, their need to impress, their need to manipulate, their insecurities, their arrogance, all of it will come to the surface when you're just watching. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to over-explain. You don't need to argue about your worth. Because people tell on themselves when you let them talk, and they expose themselves when you don't react. Your stillness becomes your strength. Your silence becomes strategy. That's how powerful people operate. They're not loud. They don't get baited into arguments. They don't waste energy trying to convince others of who they are. They already know who they are, and they measure everyone else based on action, not noise. This is what it means to stop getting played. It means not falling for the performance, not taking every apology as transformation, not assuming tone equals truth. Because the people who want to keep you off balance will always rely on emotional influence. They'll use words as weapons, and your empathy becomes their doorway. But you don't need to engage that way. You observe. You notice that the person who says, "I'll never hurt you," is the one who hurts you repeatedly. You notice the one who says, "I've changed," can't even keep their story straight. You notice the one who wants peace is always the one causing conflict. Observation gives you answers without needing confrontation. It hands you truth without asking questions. It protects your energy and arms your mind. Because when you're no longer emotionally tangled in people's words, you can finally see them for who they are, not who they pretend to be, not who you want them to be, but who they actually are. When no one's watching or when they think you're not watching, that's the real version of them. That's the data you trust. So if you're tired of being hurt, blindsided, betrayed, if you want to stop being misled, step back, be quiet, watch. Let their behavior write the truth. Let their patterns become your clarity. Let your silence reveal everything you need to know. Because while everyone else is trying to say who they are, you already know because you're not listening anymore. You're watching, and that makes you untouchable. They'll apologize. They always do. And not because they mean it, but because they know it buys time, buys silence, buys access. Apologies are cheap when they're used as a reset button. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The same lips that whispered, "I'm sorry," are the same ones that will betray you again the moment it benefits them. That's why you have to stop trusting words and start trusting patterns. A pattern is who someone is. A behavior repeated is a belief revealed. You don't need a confession. You need a timeline. You need to trace what they do, not what they say. That's where truth lives, not in their moment of remorse, but in their history of repetition. You see, people think they can save a relationship, a friendship, a connection with an apology. And sometimes they can, if it's rare, if it's followed by change. But most of the time, what they're really doing is weaponizing your empathy. They count on the fact that you're kind, that you're forgiving, that you want to see the good in people. And they use those traits not to honor you, but to manipulate your boundaries. That's where most people stay stuck, because the apology always sounds sincere. The tears are real, the voice shakes. The "I didn't mean to" feels genuine. And maybe it is, for a moment. But sincerity without consistency is just emotional noise. If someone truly regrets hurting you, the apology isn't the end. It's the beginning of changed behavior. But when you see the same apology on repeat, with no shift in action, you're not dealing with remorse. You're dealing with someone who's mastered performance, someone who's learned how to temporarily relieve your disappointment just long enough to stay in your life. Ask yourself this: how many times have they said sorry? How many times have they promised to be different? How many times have you given them another chance only to end up in the same pain? Because at some point, it's no longer about what they keep doing, it's about what you keep accepting. That's a hard truth to swallow, but it's the key to your freedom. Because once you start trusting patterns, you stop being fooled by hope. You stop being emotionally hijacked by the idea of who they could be. You stop holding your breath, waiting for them to finally become the person they keep describing. People don't change when they apologize. They change when they're committed. They change when they do the work, not just offer the words. And you know what? That change doesn't require a grand announcement. When someone is serious about growth, their actions speak so loudly they don't need to convince you. You see it, you feel it. But most people you deal with aren't trying to grow. They're trying to get comfortable again, and they'll say whatever it takes to get back in your space, especially if you have something. They want your loyalty, your forgiveness, your energy, your love. So here's the rule you live by from now on. Don't trust apologies. Trust patterns. Because the person who truly respects you doesn't have to keep saying sorry. They simply stop giving you reasons to need it. They start showing up differently. They self-correct. They remember your boundaries. They catch themselves before they cross a line. They do the hard work of changing the pattern, not just hitting replay on a convenient apology. And when you start holding people accountable to their patterns instead of their words, a shift happens in you. You stop tolerating cycles. You stop making excuses. You stop settling for potential. You become a person with standards, not just a person with a soft heart. You can still be loving, still be kind, still be open-hearted. But now you're also wise. Now you have data. You've seen this movie before, and you know how it ends. So you walk away, not because you hate them, but because you finally believe them, not their apology, their actions, their history, their choices. That's what growth looks like. That's what self-respect demands. That's what peace requires. So the next time someone comes back with, "I'm sorry," take a breath. Say thank you. but don't forget what came before. Ask yourself, what have they shown me over time? If the pattern is broken, if the behavior is new, consistent, accountable, then maybe there's space for healing. But if it's the same apology on repeat, with no real change, you already have your answer. No words can undo what a pattern reveals. Don't let temporary guilt override permanent patterns. Don't let short-term emotion ruin your long-term peace. Trust what you've seen. Believe the pattern. Move accordingly. People are more transparent than you think, but you'll never see their truth if you keep handing them the lines to speak. Every time you tell someone how you want to be treated, what you hope to hear, what you expect in love, friendship, loyalty, you give them a playbook. You teach them how to act, and the wrong people will study that script, rehearse it, perform it perfectly, until they no longer need to. And then the mask falls. It's not manipulation that's hard to spot. It's your own willingness to ignore it when someone reflects back the version of themselves you built for them. People can only fake for so long. But the reason they keep getting away with it is because you keep filling in the blanks. You keep explaining, coaching, and giving second chances based on the potential you project onto them. But here's the truth. People show you who they are, but only if you stop giving them a script. The more you try to guide someone into being what you want them to be, the less you actually get to see who they truly are. And it's not because you're wrong for loving deeply, it's because you're trying to build a connection on imagined authenticity instead of observed behavior. You've probably seen it happen before. You meet someone and everything feels aligned. They mirror your values, echo your words, match your pace, and it feels real. It feels safe. But what you're not seeing is that they're performing, maybe not even consciously, but they're shaping themselves based on the image you're presenting. You tell them what hurts you, and suddenly they're careful with your wounds. You tell them what you crave, and suddenly they provide it. You tell them what trust means to you, and they speak to that trust with all the right words. But wait, step back. Who are they without your input? Who are they without your detailed emotional blueprint? That's what matters. Not who they become under your guidance, but who they naturally reveal themselves to be when you're not directing the play. Because the moment you go silent, the truth gets loud. When you stop over-explaining, they start reacting with their default setting. When you stop managing their image of you, they start showing you their image of themselves. And that's when it happens. You start to see the patterns that were hiding behind your own expectations. You start to witness the inconsistencies between who they said they were and who they keep proving themselves to be. And it stings. It always does. Because it means you have to let go of a version of someone that you helped create. But it's necessary, because if you don't give people space to show you who they are, you'll stay entangled in a false sense of connection. One that's based on your input, not their integrity. Here's the shift. Silence isn't passive, it's powerful. Observation isn't cold, it's wise. You don't have to test people. You don't have to play games. All you have to do is watch, not in suspicion, but in self-respect. Create space for people to operate without your emotional guidance, and you'll quickly learn everything you need to know. They'll show you how they handle conflict. They'll show you how they treat others when there's nothing to gain. They'll show you what they prioritize when you're no longer explaining your needs. They'll show you whether kindness is just their mask or their true nature. The best version of someone is not who they are when they're trying to impress you. It's who they are when they think they no longer need to. That's why you must resist the urge to fix, to coach, to teach someone how to treat you over and over. Once, sure. Twice, maybe. But if you find yourself constantly telling someone what honor looks like, what loyalty feels like, what love requires, you're in a relationship with your own voice, not theirs. You deserve relationships where people already live by the standards you hold, where you don't have to translate your worth, where your values are reflected in someone's actions, not fabricated in their responses. That only happens when you stop giving scripts. Because when people are left to be themselves, their real character shines through. Some will rise, some will fall. But either way, you win. You win. Because now you're no longer investing in illusions. You're no longer clinging to potential. You're no longer making decisions based on words fed back to you with rehearsed precision. You're making decisions based on reality. That's power. Let people talk, let them act, let them show you through their own unprompted behavior whether they deserve a place in your life. No more scripts, no more scenes, no more performances. Just truth, just observation, just peace. The smartest move you'll ever make isn't shouting louder. It's saying less. It's not being the loudest in the room. It's being the one who doesn't need to speak to control it. There's a different kind of power that lives in restraint. A sharp, calculated, surgical kind of strength. One that doesn't react emotionally. One that doesn't explain, justify, or overshare. One that doesn't announce itself, but instead watches everything quietly, completely, strategically. Because when you say less, you see more. When you stop trying to be understood, you start understanding. When you step back and simply observe, the truth starts pouring out of everyone around you. People reveal who they are constantly. But you miss it when you're too busy trying to be heard, trying to correct, trying to prove a point, trying to be liked. The people who move with real power don't waste it on validation. They conserve it. They study. They read the room. They notice how people act when they don't need anything from you, how they treat you when you're no longer convenient, what they say when you're silent. Because silence is the ultimate truth serum. When you say less, two things happen. First, people start filling the space with their own truths. They over-explain, they oversell, they reveal things they didn't mean to. You learn who's insecure, who's authentic, who's playing a role. People can't stand a blank space. They will always try to fill it, and in that effort, they give themselves away. Second, your power rises. Not because you're hiding, but because you're no longer bleeding energy. You're not feeding every situation with your words. You're not giving people blueprints on how to handle you. You're not telling them how to manipulate you. You're not giving them the data they need to play you. You're quiet, yes, but you're not absent. You're active. You're present. You're watching everything. Their body language, their inconsistencies, the way their stories shift, the way they handle pressure, silence, and opposition. You're studying, not to control, but to understand. And understanding is the foundation of every smart move you'll ever make. See, people equate silence with weakness. They assume if you're not reacting, you must not notice. If you're not arguing, you must not care. If you're not asserting yourself constantly, you must not be capable. But that's because they've never encountered someone who's mastered restraint. They don't understand what it means to have self-command. They mistake stillness for softness. But silence isn't softness, it's strategy. Saying less doesn't mean you're disengaged. It means you're choosing your moment. It means you're not allowing others to dictate your timing. It means you're building leverage, waiting for patterns, letting the truth rise to the surface without interference. There's wisdom in waiting, power in pause, strength in knowing that not everything deserves your energy. Not every challenge requires a response. Not every disrespect demands a reaction. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to defend your name. You don't need to expose them. You just need to watch. They'll do it for you. They'll reveal it all. Because people always tell on themselves, especially when they think you're not watching, especially when they believe your silence is surrender. What they don't see is that your silence is a tactic. Your quiet is a vault. Your attention is a weapon. So say less. Stop announcing your boundaries. Enforce them. Stop explaining your worth. Embody it. Stop warning people not to cross you. Let them try. Stop debating with fools. Watch them disqualify themselves. The more you speak, the more you expose. The more you explain, the more you dilute your position. And the more noise you make, the less you hear. But the one who watches, the one who listens more than they speak, they collect everything. Every motive, every pattern, every crack in the story. And when they move with precision. No emotion, no drama, no apology. That's the kind of power that doesn't shake when challenged. It doesn't get dragged into chaos. It doesn't need the last word. It knows the last move is what matters. And the last move? That belongs to the one who studied the whole board while everyone else was busy talking. So play it smart, say less, watch more. Let them think you're not paying attention. Let them underestimate your silence. Let them expose themselves trying to impress you, fool you, or manipulate you. And when the time comes, act not out of emotion, but out of knowledge, out of truth, out of full, undeniable clarity. Because by then you won't need to ask who they are.
You'll already know.
You've seen enough, you've heard enough. You don't need another excuse, another promise, another speech from anyone trying to convince you of who they are. Because now you know the truth. They showed you, not in what they said, but in what they did when they thought you weren't paying attention. You listened, you observed, you tracked the patterns, and now you move with that knowledge. No noise, no warnings, no dramatic exits, just presence, just power, just clarity. You're not here to chase people down and beg for decency. You're not here to educate someone on how to treat you. That chapter is closed. That version of you, the one that tolerated, explained, gave the benefit of the doubt, is gone. Now, you operate in silence. Now, you protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. Now, you don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to explain to be respected. You don't need to announce your worth. You live it. This isn't about revenge. This is about remembering who you are. You are the storm they didn't see coming because they mistook your silence for softness. They mistook your stillness for surrender. They thought you weren't strong because you weren't screaming. They were wrong. You don't threaten, you don't warn, you don't perform. You just walk. And when you walk away, doors close permanently. From now on, let your absence speak louder than your presence ever had to. Let your elevation be the only explanation you ever give. Let them watch everything they lost and let that silence echo louder than anything you could have said. You don't need their validation. You've got your truth. And your truth, that's your power. So don't listen. Look, watch, then act, and never look back.